Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, will desegregating MCPS schools result in a divisive battle over busing? Maryland Senate President Mike Miller steps down. Who will replace him? And is there a Senate seat in Larry Hogan's future? Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the past president of Progressive Maryland, Elbridge James, Secretary of the Maryland Republican Party, Mark Uncapher, President of the Chevy Chase Women's Republican Club, Laurie Halverson, and the former mayor of Rockville, Susan Hoffmann. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. For years, the Montgomery County Board of Education has struggled with how to improve standardized test scores for minority students. In January, MCPS launched its first comprehensive review of school attendance boundaries. Its goal is multifaceted to alleviate crowding problems, diversify schools with large concentrations of minority students, and create more effective transportation patterns. Mark Richard Kallenberg at the Century Foundation said MCPS schools do have a fair amount of segregation that reflects on residential segregation. Schools are meant to bring everyone together, and yet in Montgomery County that isn't happening as fully as it could. Now, the term residential segregation sounds a lot like school boundaries are going to be manipulated, which sets off alarm bells for parents and maybe even the possibility of busing.
Right. A generation ago, MCPS could boast of having schools across the county that were the envy of the entire country. There were some better than others, but virtually every high school was in the top echelon. Increasingly, the best results in Montgomery County are shrinking to those areas with basically the most income and the highest percentage of parents with advanced degrees. And so Montgomery County schools have, in fact, yes, become less equal than they used to be.
But is that for socioeconomic reasons only?
Well, there is a socioeconomic component to it. There's also, I think, a component that the parents have been expected to do a substantial part of the teaching in schools, and so those kids with parents who have a advanced degree or a college education have been given an advantage vis-a-vis everybody else.
So, but what we're looking at is de facto,
not de jure.
Not
right.
Mandated segregation.
We desegregated the schools in Montgomery. Forgive me, it was in the 50s or early. Yes, in the 50s. Quite a long time ago. But we do see disparities within the county now.
Well, it was
so Elbridge,
in the 50s, but basically it was more so full-wide in the early 60s. One of the problems you had is that several years ago to attract majority students to minority communities is had magnet schools. Blair and Richard Montgomery were two classic Einstein, two examples. That successful program though got transferred and manipulated to go to other schools also, and then therefore what you had are same programs but now being taught in more of the community neighborhood schools, and the fact is that the PTAs, and that's what we're talking about in terms of the economic benefit, because a lot of the school funding is the same, but the PTAs are able to contribute and support the school both monetarily and also with their direct participation in terms of school activities. And that's something that needs to be addressed.
Although one of the issues is parents in Montgomery County get a whole stack of contracts that includes providing extra resources, helping with homeworks, and doing more. And that is a source of inequality. And I'm not quite sure how you address that.
Well, Title I provides extra money for the schools that have the biggest needs. I think what we have that's different is that there's more parental involvement in the schools that are doing the best.
But I want to ask Elbridge about this, because we're not the only county struggling with this in the country. In Education Weekly, there's an article that discusses the struggle that Wake County, North Carolina has gone through to achieve its diversity in its school system. And according to Jim Martin, the Wake County Schools Board Chairman, student assignment, that's what we're talking about, making the boundaries different, is just one of the tools to address this. to address equitable and integrated schools. It's not the only tool, but he specifically said it's not about busing. And if you followed up further, he says it's more about the socioeconomic opportunities in the county. So is there a way to achieve this without showing the divisiveness that we saw 2 decades ago?
Well, fortunately, we're in Montgomery County. Well, no, we're in the state of Maryland and not in North Carolina. And trust me, there are some social issues to deal with North Carolina. But in the state of Maryland, and in particular in Montgomery County, we have a good partnership between parents, concerned parents, and educators who really need to come up with better ideas.
But last April, when they had a first open meeting in Silver Spring to discuss the school boundary issues, you could see the same anger coming from the parents that was exhibited years ago when they started talking about busing, because nobody wants their school boundaries to change for a whole host of reasons.
School boundaries always get changed, but this is the first time it's been highlighted. No, this is not the first time. It's one of the few times it gets highlighted. I got children in my neighborhood that used to go to one school and now go to another school, and it's based on some of the economics, some of the growth in different neighborhoods and things of this nature. Boundaries get changed. Parents have to get over that. And in fact, after a year or two, they do get over it. But the point is that where parents are concerned about the quality of the education, and that's up to the school system and the school board and the teachers to show each parent, your child's not going to be at risk, because the child is our greatest jewel.
Well, you can say that they're going to get over the boundary issue as long as they still feel that it's a neighborhood school system. If they start feeling like their school boundaries are being gerrymandered the way the congressional districts are in order to achieve certain results, they may not get over it.
That's going to depend on the school administration and the school system to, in fact, I don't want to say placate, but explain all the particulars that go into why a boundary gets changed. School districts have changed, boundaries have changed, and parents in my community and neighborhood don't even recognize it because they had an older son going one place and now a younger son going somewhere else.
So Laurie, in terms of resources, I mean, obviously, as Mark pointed out earlier, the resources that seem to be going towards the county schools in the western part of the county seem greater than in the eastern part of the county. How do you balance that issue?
I wouldn't necessarily say that, because I know that there are more paraeducators in the less affluent schools, because I know in my school in Potomac, they were always advocating for more paraeducators because we weren't Title I school. I think that you have to just think about what you're going to It's very complicated, and people are being called racist for wanting to protect their homes and the value of their homes. There are some parents that are concerned that the value of their home will go down if there's busing. As a PTA leader, I've been getting a lot of calls. I used to be a PTA leader, and people are calling me concerned that their kids are going to be bused, and they want their kids to have a quality education. That's why they moved to where they moved.
But how far are they going to be bused? Because now kids get on buses nowadays, and they get bused in this direction versus that direction, and they may have to travel a half mile more or a mile more. They're on the bus, and it's our responsibility to get them the best education no matter where they go. That's one point. Here's the other point. We're trying to raise leaders, and leaders need to know who they're going to lead. They need to be familiar with people with different backgrounds, different personalities, different ethnic communities with cultures and standards. That is one of the goals we're trying to achieve here.
Is that the job of the public school system? Isn't the job of the public school system to educate? Why are we introducing the idea of a social program into the public school system?
Because we're developing leaders. Remember, I retired from the University of Maryland. I saw some of our most gifted and brightest that came from isolated communities. And when they got in the general population, as the phrase goes, okay, they didn't have a clue how to associate or relate with anybody.
Elbridge, I think there are a lot of parents who are looking very, very closely at the SAT scores of the high schools around the county, and they are taking note of the fact that there are these widening disparities between between individual schools. And that's a source of fear, and that's a source of concern.
Well, it's not just, I mean, the concerns about the education system aren't just about the boundaries. And Susan, I want to talk to you a little bit about the curriculum argument that gets wrapped into this. Nationwide, the public education system has been in the middle of a political battle for decades over curriculum, but it's usually about the teaching of history, political science, some of the other softer subjects. Now there's an allegation, or there's a proposal floating around in Seattle by that mathematics is racist. How can that be? How can mathematics and the teaching be used to disenfranchise people of color?
Well, it's an interesting concept, and I was quite taken by surprise actually when I started looking into it. So the ethnic committee that was appointed by the Seattle public school system to take a look at the curriculum and look at all of the components of it in terms of ethnic disparity, have claimed that mathematics is racist. And not being a great mathematics student, I would never presume to know that much about mathematics, but I found it to be rather surprising, because I always thought mathematics was pretty straight. The answers were straight. There was no coloration. And what they're saying is that Western civilization has co-opted mathematics to benefit the people, not to disparage people of color and disadvantage people of color. And so what they're going to do now is they're still studying the situation, studying the program, and they're going to make a recommendation on September 1st of 2020 to create a new curriculum.
Well, here's what I know. What I know is that in this day and age, if you don't have a good background in mathematics, because of the importance that mathematics plays in the technology fields, you are going to be left behind. So if we are trying to teach people that there is discrimination in how you learn math, this is a disincentive to people, and it's the wrong message that's being sent. But we have to end this segment, and when we come back from this short break, we're going to get into the politics. We're going to talk about political musical chairs, who's going to succeed retiring Maryland Senate President Mike Miller, and who's going to succeed the late Elijah Cummings. Stay tuned. And welcome back. The funeral for 11-term Congressman Elijah Cummings was held earlier today. Representative Cummings was eulogized by former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton for his service to Maryland and to the county. Now, as they say, the king is dead, long live the king. The tension turns to who's going to succeed Elijah Cummings. Mark, the governor has great latitude when to call a special election. Has he announced when that special election is going to occur?
The last I checked, no. I think he's waiting until after the funeral, which was today. But even when he announces that, there's a minimum of 130 days, 65 days for the primary, 65 days for the general election. So even if at midnight tonight or before midnight tonight an announcement were made, the final election wouldn't be held until March.
Well, but let's be realistic.
The final election is the primary election.
Way to go,
65
Susan.
days
Yeah, let's not kid each other.
Let's not be unfair. Actually, one of our 21 this week regulars is already filed practically the first day. Liz Mattori filed, but
Great.
I'm assuming you're not giving her much in the way of a chance.
All the best of luck.
But this is the thing. I mean, there's great leeway here. In Elbridge, now the speculation is that Cummings' widow, Maya Rockymore Cummings, would be elected if the election was held sooner rather than later, because that would prevent others like our colleague running for office or other Democrats from running for office to gather their funds, get their money. Because let's face it, the death of Congressman Cummings came very sudden and unexpected. And those that want to run for that seat probably haven't done the preparation. So what should be done here? Should there be an open field, and should he push the election back? Or
Can't
should
push
it
the
be done
election
sooner?
back because, in fact,
can't.
the regular election comes a little bit sooner after that anyway. So he can't push it back.
Yes, he can.
He can make it vacant.
He can make it. He can schedule it coterminous or coincide
Well,
with
I understand
the general
that.
election.
No, he has to
he
call a
doesn't.
special election.
No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does.
But he can designate that along the same timeline
He has
as the future election.
The state law requires that he announce it.
He has to announce it,
Right.
right?
But when
the
he
date
puts it in
the date,
in
he
effect.
gets to choose the date. He can delay that special election to coincide with the primaries next year.
I don't think so.
But guess what?
Yes,
Bottom
ma'am.
line is the phrase goes, stay tuned to see what he does. He's going to try to stay out of this as much as possible because it is not in his best interest to do a special appointment or anything of that nature, if that were possible.
he can't
Well,
do
I know
it.
that's
He
what I'm
can't
make an
saying. I
appointment.
know.
Right.
But bottom line also, currently from this moment up through January, the widow has the best shot. She spoke today at the funeral, and she spoke eloquently, and she touched all the bases. She is the front runner, and I don't see anyone beating her out if she chooses, because she's a good speaker.
But
She's
congressional
young.
seats don't become vacant very often, and ambitious politicians aren't always satisfied to sit on the sidelines if they want to go for a seat.
He was well loved, and as you said earlier, his unexpected death is catching everyone off guard, except for those that clearly knew that something was amiss, but they were more allies than enemies.
And his widow, I mean, we should mention that more than being his widow, which she
Yeah.
certainly is, and our condolences go out to her. She's also the state Democratic chairman. She was a candidate for
Yes.
governor. She's a formidable
Formidable,
political
correct.
force in her own right.
Exactly. And so she will, in addition to having a head start, based on the fact that she is the widow and has the sympathy, of course.
She has the party apparatus behind her.
She also is a very savvy political
Correct.
person, and so she will be hard to beat no matter what.
Okay, well, I think that if I were an aggressive young representative, I might want to challenge her. Susan.
Yes.
Get your
We're
feelings hurt.
talking about
Get
something,
your
something
feelings hurt.
about something other than, because there's another major shift in the General Assembly is Senate President Mike Miller is giving up his leadership position while he battles cancer. What do we know about Senator Bill Ferguson, who's seen as the likely successor?
So Bill Ferguson is not a well-known name. He's been in the legislature. He's been a senator since 2011, so that's only 8 years. He represents the 46th district, which is mostly the harbor. So that, for those of you who know the city, he's smart. He's well regarded. He's also extremely aggressive, and he graduated magna cum laude from the University of Maryland School of Law. So he's pretty accomplished. How he got this lined up within the last week is pretty interesting. It's my understanding that the president, that Mike Miller, was not involved at all in selecting Senator Ferguson. I will also just say that this is one more opportunity that the county of Montgomery and the leadership could have had to possibly run one of their own very accomplished senators, and they did not hang together.
So, Laurie, it's going to be interesting to see how the General Assembly operates next session with a new Speaker of the House, Adrian Jones, and a new Senate President. What do you think is going to be accomplished or not accomplished?
Yeah, well, I think Adrian Jones is well liked by a lot of people, and I was really pleased when I heard that the Republicans and the NAACP came together to get her elected. So she's off to a great start. I think she'll be an effective legislator. Now, Bill Ferguson, I don't know as well, but I have talked to him in the past. He was the president or the chair of the Senate nominating committee. He was a Teach for America teacher, and he is flexible. He likes the idea of more flexible laws in charter schools. So I am really hoping to see improvement in charter school laws because he's going to be leading now.
All right, so I want to go to Mark on this, because at one time, and I think Susan brought this up, there was a thought that the influence of Baltimore was waning, and that the outer suburbs, Montgomery and Prince George's County, as the economic engine, was gaining power. Is that changed now?
You would say Baltimore is back, except I'm not sure they ever let go. So
Correct.
there's certainly been a force for quite some time within it. Listen, we have two rookie leaders, if you will, and not to denigrate them, but certainly they don't have the position of having been in office for a long time, the way, obviously, for example, President Miller had been.
To get a building named after
Miller.
you.
But
Yes.
the point is both of them will need to be leaders that are balancing broad constituencies across the state in order to get things done.
And there's more to be seen, and it'll be seen shortly as soon as the legislature convenes. But Elbridge, I've got the exit question for you, which was a dangling participle that was set out there. There was speculation in the Washington Post that Larry Hogan could challenge U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen in 2022 when his second term ends. Is this idle thinking by a bored reporter, or is there an actual possibility of that?
I would
You got
say
about 30 seconds to answer this.
that was idle until I saw the Dinos act in this last gubernatorial election. Dinos, Democrats in name only, and we know who I'm talking about. In terms of turn against the Democratic candidate. I do not know. I still believe.
You can't say is Van Hollen weak?
No, Van Hollen is good in Baltimore, Prince
vulnerable?
George's County. I don't know how strong Hogan will be, and I don't know how the backing of some of those part-time Democrats will be. That is leaving it totally up to air. And what we want to say about Mike Miller, Matt Mathias, and not Matt Mathias. Not Matt Mathias. The gentleman that
Middleton.
Matt Middleton. When he lost his election, and there's been a lot of old timers losing their elections, both in Baltimore and in different parts. That's why you have a new breed of elected official.
Well, it was an interesting little tidbit and some morsel to chew on in the cold winter months.
We Democrats had a good laugh over it.
Yeah, I bet you did. Stay tuned though for parting shots. And welcome back. Now with parting shots, Elbridge James. Say something nice, Elbridge.
God help me. The Nationals. Go for it. I'm not one of your fans, but I do recognize teamwork and talent. That is a great team. It's their time. I wish them well, unfortunately.
Baby shark. Oh. Mark, Uncapher, your parting shot.
It's that time of year. It's time to get your flu shot. Fewer than about half the people in the country get the flu shot. It's a small pinprick, but it may well save you a lot of grief later in the season. So go ahead and get it done.
Thank you, Mark. Laurie Halverson, your parting shot.
I wish it could be nice, but I just feel like I need to say something about Cheryl Kagan's letter that went out today to her constituents in Rockville. It was about Brigida Mulligan. She was advising people not to vote for her for city council in Rockville, and she called her a fearmonger among many other things that were untrue. So not cool, and I think that name calling needs to stop.
Thank you, Laura. And Susan Hoffmann, your parting shot.
Yes, I'm very proud and honored to have be able to say that Elijah Cummings, the late great Elijah Cummings, was a friend of mine. I got to know him when he served in the House of Delegates in Annapolis, and I was there as a legislative analyst on behalf of the county. And he was a man of greatness. We saw it in Annapolis, and we certainly saw it when he served in the U.S. Congress and as chair of government operations. And he will be very sorely missed.
Thank you, Susan. I think we all share similar sentiments about Congressman Cummings. Now, the worst part about the Nationals being in the World Series are the announcers. Joe Buck, Give me a break. Can you ever shut up for 30 seconds so that you can hear a little bit about the crowd and you can hear and think about your thoughts? Now, that was terrible and bad enough that 2 nights in a row I had to listen to Joe. But I'm driving home and I get a text from my assistant. She goes, "Oh my God, you won't believe who's announcing the Redskins game tonight." Yeah, Joe Buck. My God, it's going to be a long weekend. I want to thank the panel for being here tonight. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in every week. And we have a special treat for you next week because our own Mark Uncapher is going to be substitute hosting, and he's going to rock it. He's going to rock it. So for 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.